Have you ever wondered how many dreams have died, not because of lack of talent or opportunity, but because someone was too afraid to say one simple word, no? Right now, some of you are living a life designed by everyone except you. You've said yes to obligations you resent. Yes to relationships that drain you. Yes to expectations that suffocate your spirit. But here's the truth. Every time you say yes to something that doesn't serve your purpose, you are silently saying no to the life you were born to live. Stay with me, because in the next few minutes, you will discover how reclaiming the power of no can transform not only your confidence, but your destiny itself. By the end of this message, you'll understand why saying no is not rejection, it's liberation. It is the doorway to your highest self. Saying no is often misunderstood. We are conditioned to believe that it is rude, selfish, or confrontational. But in reality, no is a boundary, a protective shield that guards your time, your energy, and your vision. Consider this. Every time you agree to something that violates your values, you betray yourself a little. You dilute your identity. And over time, you wake up not recognizing the person in the mirror. Saying no is how you define what matters most. It is how you create space for what is essential. Think about a sculptor working on a block of marble. What makes the masterpiece emerge is not what he adds, but what he removes. In the same way, your greatness is revealed not only by what you embrace, but by what you refuse to allow. There is hidden power in no because it is the word that makes your yes meaningful. If you never say no, then your yes has no value. It's just a default response, a habit of surrendering your agency. You must understand that people will always have plans for your life. They will always want your time, your agreement, your validation. And if you don't set boundaries, you will be pulled in 100 directions until your own purpose becomes unrecognizable. Saying no doesn't make you unkind. It makes you honest. It declares to the world, I know who I am. I know what I am called to do. I refuse to trade authenticity for approval. This is not an easy practice. It will cost you the comfort of fitting in. It may disappoint people who benefit from your compliance, but it will also set you free from the prison of constant obligation. So how do you begin? Pause before you commit. Never feel pressured to give an immediate answer. Clarity requires space. Ask yourself, does this align with my purpose and values? If it doesn't, it is a distraction. Practice saying no with kindness but firmness. You don't need to justify your boundaries to everyone. Remember that your time is finite. Every no today creates room for a bigger yes tomorrow. You will never fully discover who you are until you master the discipline of refusal. Saying no is not closing a door, it's opening the right ones. You don't have to be everything to everyone. You don't have to apologize for protecting your purpose. The power to say no is the power to become the person you were meant to be. Today, make a decision. No more living on borrowed priorities. No more sacrificing your future to avoid temporary discomfort. Reclaim your voice. Reclaim your boundaries. And watch how your life transforms when you finally embrace the hidden power of saying no. Saying no is not rejection of others. It's acceptance of your true self. We are taught from an early age that saying no is something negative. It sounds harsh, dismissive, or selfish. When you tell someone no, you worry about hurting their feelings. disappointing them, or being judged as unkind. Over time, this fear conditions you to believe that agreement is the safest path to acceptance. You become someone who automatically says yes because it feels easier. You go along with plans you don't believe in. You tolerate relationships that drain you. You take on responsibilities that don't belong to you. And without realizing it, you lose touch with your own identity. But here is the truth that too many people never discover. Saying no is not about rejecting others. It is about accepting yourself fully. It is about acknowledging that your time, energy, and purpose matter just as much as anyone else's. When you say no, you are not pushing people away out of spite or ego. You are simply making room for your truest priorities and protecting the space in which your best self can grow. Consider how often you have agreed to something you didn't want to do. Maybe you said yes to taking on an extra project at work when you were already overwhelmed. Maybe you said yes to spending time with people who constantly complain or criticize you. Maybe you said yes to habits and distractions that pulled you away from your goals. In each of those moments, the act of saying yes was actually a quiet no to yourself. It was a denial of your own needs and your own calling. That is why learning to say no is an act of profound self-acceptance. It is declaring that you have value, that your feelings are valid, and that your purpose deserves your full commitment. It is giving yourself permission to stand firmly in who you are, even when that means disappointing someone else. When you say no, you are not defining the worth of the person making the request. You are defining the worth of your own time and energy. There will always be people who expect you to be endlessly available, agreeable, and accommodating. Some of them will take your compliance for granted. Some will praise you for being selfless, not realizing that your constant giving is eroding your strength and clarity. But you are not created to live at the mercy of other people's expectations. You were created to fulfill a unique purpose. And you can never do that if you're afraid to draw boundaries. Saying no is also the first step to building a life that feels authentic. It is an invitation to align your actions with your convictions. When you start honoring your instincts, when you trust your intuition that something isn't right, you build self-respect. You begin to understand that you do not owe your life to anyone else's agenda. You are free to define what matters, what deserves your time, and what you are willing to give. This freedom is not selfishness, it is maturity. Think about how much peace you lose when you agree to things you don't want to do. You spend hours in anxiety, frustration, or regret. You feel resentful toward people who expect more of you than you can give. But the truth is, resentment is often a symptom of saying yes too often. It is the internal alarm that reminds you you are betraying your own needs for the sake of approval. When you learn to say no, that resentment dissolves because you are finally honoring your inner compass. It is important to realize that saying no is not always comfortable. Some people will be offended. Some will question your motives. Some will try to manipulate you with guilt. But if you make every decision to avoid conflict, you end up in a lifelong conflict with yourself. You trade short-term comfort for long-term misery. In the end, the people who truly respect you will understand and even admire your boundaries. You truly respect your boundaries when you stand for your boundaries and admire your boundaries. Those who don't respect them were never invested in your well-being anyway. This shift in perspective is liberating. You no longer see no as an act of hostility. You see it as an act of love. Love for your purpose, love for your health, love for your vision. When you choose to accept your true self, you become more present and generous in the commitments you do make. Your yes becomes real, wholehearted, and meaningful because it isn't diluted by resentment or fear. Imagine how your life would look if you only said yes to the things that genuinely align with your purpose. You would have more clarity, you would have more energy, you would have more time to invest in the relationships and goals that matter. This is the hidden power of no. It is not a barrier between you and others. It is a bridge that connects you back to yourself. When you understand that every no is a yes to something more important, you no longer feel guilty for protecting your priorities. You recognize that your life is a limited resource and you're responsible for how you spend it. So the next time you feel pressured to say yes out of fear, pause and ask yourself, am I rejecting them or am I finally accepting myself? You may find that this one question changes everything. Because saying no is not about closing doors. It is about opening the right ones. It is about stepping fully into your purpose and refusing to live a life of quiet compromise. And in that decision, you will discover the freedom, peace, and self-respect you have been searching for all along. Each time you say no to distractions, you say yes to your purpose. Distractions are everywhere. They show up in the form of tempting invitations, endless notifications, shallow conversations, and obligations that look important but only drain your energy. We live in a world where you can fill every moment with noise and activity but never make real progress toward anything meaningful. This is why the discipline of saying no is not just a nice skill, it is an essential practice for anyone who wants to fulfill their purpose. Every single day, you are presented with countless choices. Some of these choices are clear and obvious. Will you spend time working on your goals or waste hours scrolling through social media? Will you invest in the relationships that build you up or get entangled in the drama of people who drain your spirit? Will you protect your mental space or allow other people's demands to hijack your peace? These decisions do not look dramatic in the moment. They feel small and harmless. But over time, the cumulative effect of constantly choosing distraction over purpose is devastating. You wake up years later and wonder why you feel unfulfilled, why your dreams are still distant, why you have lost your sense of clarity and excitement. The truth is, you did not lose your purpose. You traded it, one distraction at a time. This is why learning to say no is so powerful. It is not merely about refusing activities or people. It is about reclaiming your time, your mind, and your energy for what matters most. Every no to distraction is a deliberate yes to your growth, your calling, and your destiny. It is an affirmation that you were not born to drift aimlessly through life. You were created to do something specific, something significant, and that requires focus. Imagine you are trying to build a masterpiece, a life that reflects your deepest values, talents, and dreams. You have the tools, the raw materials, and the vision. But if you keep stepping away from the work to answer every knock at the door, to respond to every pointless request, to entertain every passing impulse, you will never finish. Your masterpiece remains a sketch, an unfinished idea, because you could not protect the space it needed to come to life. Saying no to distractions is how you create that protected space. It is how you carve out room to think deeply, to plan intentionally, to rest and recharge. It is how you gather the mental and emotional resources to pursue goals that are worthy of your potential. When you look at people who accomplish extraordinary things, you will see a common pattern. They are ruthless about what they allow into their lives. They are not cruel or arrogant, but they are clear. They have decided in advance what deserves their yes, and they do not apologize for it. This clarity does not happen by accident. You have to decide what matters before you are in the moment of temptation. You have to define your purpose so precisely that anything that doesn't align with it becomes easier to decline. Without that definition, you will always be reactive. You will always be at the mercy of other people's urgencies, opinions, and distractions. Opinions and distractions. Consider this. Every time you say yes to a distraction, you are borrowing time and energy from your future self. You are creating a debt that will have to be repaid later with regret, stress, and missed opportunities. But every time you say no to distraction, you are making a deposit into your purpose. You are building momentum, clarity, and confidence. It is not easy to say no, especially when the distraction is something that gives you instant gratification or social approval. It feels good to be included, to be busy, to feel needed. But you must ask yourself, does this take me closer to the life I am meant to live, or is it pulling me further away? If you do not learn to ask this question honestly, you will spend your most precious years caught up in what seems urgent, but is ultimately irrelevant. You have to remember that your purpose is fragile in the beginning. Like a seed, it needs to be planted in a protected environment. It cannot compete with every weed that tries to choke it out. If you give distractions unlimited access to your attention, your purpose will never grow strong enough to withstand the pressures of life. It will remain a possibility instead of becoming your reality. Saying no is how you protect that seed. It is how you build the habits and mindset that make it possible to stay committed even when the world is trying to pull you in 1,000 directions. The more you practice this discipline, the more natural it becomes. Over time, you stop feeling guilty for declining invitations that don't serve you. You stop feeling obligated to engage in conversations that deplete you. You begin to value your time as the most irreplaceable resource you have. When you look back on your life, you will not regret the distractions you ignored. You will not wish you had spent more time appeasing people who didn't respect your boundaries. You will be grateful that you had the courage to say no when it counted, so you could say a wholehearted yes to the work and relationships that gave your life meaning. Remember this: your purpose is waiting for you to make a decision. It will not compete for your attention. It will not scream for validation. It will simply stand in quiet strength, waiting for you to return. Every time you say no to what doesn't matter, you take another step closer to what does. And that is how you create a life of substance instead of a life of noise. Many people believe that constantly saying yes is a virtue, that it makes you more kind, more likable, more worthy of belonging. But behind this reflex to agree and please lies something far more dangerous: the fear of rejection and disapproval. This fear can become the silent puppeteer of your decisions, pulling your strings without you even realizing it. When you feel compelled to say yes to every request, every invitation, and every demand, you are not truly making choices. You are reacting to the anxiety that someone will think less of you if you dare to stand firm. The fear whispers that if you say no, you will be abandoned, disliked, criticized, or misunderstood. Over time, this fear becomes so normal that you stop questioning it. You confuse your habit of pleasing others with being a good person, when in reality you are living a life shaped by the approval of others rather than by your own convictions. Ask yourself honestly, how many times have you agreed to something you didn't want to do simply because you were afraid of the discomfort that would follow if you declined? How often have you stretched yourself thin to accommodate expectations that felt heavy on your shoulders? These moments may seem small in isolation, a favor here, an extra project there, a social obligation you dreaded, but together they create a life that feels crowded, pressured, and inauthentic. It is difficult to admit that fear is dictating your choices. Nobody likes to think of themselves as weak or easily swayed, but self-honesty is the first step toward reclaiming your freedom. You have to be willing to see that your inability to say no is not an accident. It is an emotional pattern rooted in a deep desire to be accepted. The problem is, you end up sacrificing your own peace, purpose, and energy in exchange for approval that often proves temporary and conditional. This fear is usually learned early. As children, many people are taught to comply, to be agreeable, to avoid conflict. You may have absorbed the belief that love and acceptance are rewards for pleasing others. When this becomes your inner script, saying no feels like you are risking love itself. It feels like you are violating some unspoken contract to always be available, always be agreeable, always be convenient. But here is the hard truth. The people who truly care about you don't need you to abandon yourself to prove your loyalty. They don't need you to suppress your feelings or betray your own limits. The ones who demand that you always say yes are often those who benefit from your lack of boundaries, not those who genuinely want what's best for you. When you look closely, you will see that the fear of losing approval has stolen countless hours of your life. It has kept you locked in relationships that no longer serve you. It has held you back from pursuing dreams that required courage and self-respect. It has diluted your confidence because every time you silence your own no, you reinforce the belief that your needs are less important than everyone else's. Breaking free from this fear does not mean you become harsh or indifferent. It means you learn to value your own well-being as much as you value the opinions of others. It means you stop handing over your self-worth to people who have no right to define it. It means you trust that the right relationships built on mutual respect and authenticity, can withstand your boundaries. The first time you say no from a place of clarity rather than fear, it will feel uncomfortable. Your heart might race. Your voice might shake, and your mind will be flooded with guilt and second-guessing. This is normal. You are dismantling years of conditioning. You are challenging the belief that love is earned by self-abandonment. But if you stay with that discomfort instead of running from it, you will discover something extraordinary. The approval you were so afraid to lose was never as necessary as you thought. You will see that the world does not end when you say no. You will feel a quiet relief, a sense of inner alignment that tells you you are finally living in integrity with yourself. Over time, this practice builds real confidence. You start to realize that your value does not depend on how much you do for others. You learn that your worth is inherent and unchanging, regardless of whether people agree with your decisions. You begin to trust that every no you speak from a place of honesty creates more room in your life for the yes that truly matters. Imagine how your life would feel if you were no longer ruled by the fear of disapproval. Imagine the peace of knowing you don't have to perform or overextend yourself to be loved. Imagine the strength that comes from standing firm in your convictions even when others don't understand. This is not selfishness. It is self-respect. It is the foundation of a life that is both purposeful and free. So the next time you feel that familiar pressure to say yes out of fear, pause and breathe. Ask yourself whose approval you are really seeking and why. Remember that every time you say no with courage, you weaken the hold that fear has over you. You take one more step away from a life of quiet resentment and one step closer to a life of authentic self-expression. This is the hidden power of saying no. It is how you reclaim yourself from the tyranny of other people's expectations. It is how you begin to live not as a hostage to approval, but as the author of your own story. It is easy to think that every opportunity deserves your attention, every request deserves your energy, and every invitation deserves your time. After all, we live in a culture that glorifies busyness and celebrates those who seem to be everywhere doing everything. But if you look deeper, you will see a hidden cost behind this constant agreement. Every time you say yes to something that does not serve your purpose, you are, without realizing it, closing the door on something that could have propelled you forward. This is one of the most subtle forms of self-sabotage. Spreading yourself so thin over obligations, distractions, and other people's agendas that there is nothing left for your own mission. You end up living a life that looks full on the surface but feels empty in your soul. You feel restless, unfulfilled, and secretly resentful, wondering why you never have time to pursue what matters most to you. It is not because you are unlucky or because you lack discipline. Often it is simply because you have not learned to protect your time with the courage to say no. You have not yet decided that your growth is worth more than temporary approval or the illusion of being helpful. Every yes carries a hidden no. When you agree to stay in situations that drain you, you say no to environments that inspire you. When you accept tasks that distract you from your goals, you say no to the focused work that would move you closer to your dreams. When you keep tolerating relationships that undermine your confidence, you say no to the connections that could nurture your spirit and challenge you to rise higher. The most successful, purposeful people are not those who do everything for everyone. They are the ones who have learned to discern what is essential and to say no to everything else. They understand that time is a finite resource. They respect their own potential enough to guard it fiercely. Consider this. If you had only 1 year to dedicate fully to your highest vision, would you keep saying yes to petty arguments, endless favors, pointless obligations, or toxic people? Probably not. You would be fiercely selective. You would choose activities and relationships that ignite your growth, that build your strength, that align with your purpose. You would feel no shame about declining what does not serve that mission. So why wait for life to force that clarity on you? Why not decide now that your purpose matters enough to protect? One of the greatest obstacles to self-discovery is this idea that you owe your availability to everyone. But you do not. You owe yourself the chance to live a life that reflects your values, your vision, and your potential. You owe yourself the opportunity to wake up every day and know that your energy is going somewhere meaningful. When you begin to say no to what does not align, you will likely encounter resistance. People will question your motives. They may label you selfish or arrogant because your boundaries disrupt the status quo they have become comfortable with. This is not a sign that you are wrong. It is a sign that you are growing. In fact, the discomfort of saying no is proof that you are stepping away from complacency and stepping into conscious choice. You are refusing to let your life be shaped by random requests and unexamined habits. You are standing in the truth that every hour you spend is a statement about what you believe is important. Think about the countless small decisions you make each week. Answering that late-night message, taking on a project you don't believe in, agreeing to meet out of obligation, attending events that drain you. Each of those moments is an opportunity to practice alignment. Each is a chance to ask yourself, does this honor my purpose, or am I just afraid to disappoint someone? Imagine how your life would feel if you began to choose differently. Imagine replacing those scattered, reluctant yeses with deliberate, wholehearted commitments to what fuels your growth. Imagine saying no without guilt, because you trust that your time and energy are sacred resources meant to build something lasting. This is not about becoming rigid or unkind. It is about realizing that you cannot serve the world effectively if you are constantly betraying your own purpose. Your ability to make an impact depends on your willingness to stay anchored in what matters most to you. When you learn to say no to misaligned commitments, you will be amazed at what begins to unfold. You will feel lighter because you are no longer burdened by obligations that were never yours to carry. You will feel more inspired because you have room to pursue ideas and projects that excite you. You will feel more confident because every decision reinforces that you value your path enough to protect it. Your growth is not something that happens by accident. It is the natural result of consistently choosing what aligns with your purpose and releasing what does not. It is built in the quiet moments when you decide to honor your vision, even if it means disappointing others. So remember this. Every time you say yes without discernment, you are quietly telling yourself that your purpose can wait. But your purpose is not something to be postponed or neglected. It is the reason you are here. It is the source of your deepest fulfillment and your greatest contribution. And it begins the moment you decide that a life of growth, clarity, and integrity is worth every no you must learn to speak. Saying no is not rejection. It is redirection toward the life you are truly meant to live. Most of us have been conditioned to believe that when we say no, we are shutting a door forever, rejecting people or opportunities that might never come back. We are taught that decline is a form of ingratitude or even arrogance. Because of this, we grow up afraid of the word, thinking that each no we utter is an act of aggression or coldness. But what if the opposite is true? What if saying no is one of the most life-affirming, constructive decisions you can make? When you say no to something that does not serve you, you are not simply rejecting it out of spite or fear. You are actively redirecting your precious time, your focus, and your emotional energy toward what matters more. You are choosing to trust that your life has a purpose so important that it deserves your full attention. This is not rejection in the negative sense. It is an intentional movement away from what drains you and toward what fulfills you. Think of how much time you have spent tolerating situations that suffocate your potential. Think of the countless hours you have sacrificed out of obligation, helping people who did not appreciate it, doing work you didn't believe in, attending gatherings that left you empty. In each of those moments, a part of you knew this was not where you belonged. But you stayed because you feared being seen as difficult or ungrateful. If you look closely, you will realize those were not harmless compromises. They were subtle acts of self-abandonment. They kept you from discovering what you were really capable of because you were too busy proving you were agreeable. What happens when you start to see no as a form of redirection rather than rejection? You reclaim your power to choose. You no longer wait passively for life to hand you clarity. You create it by refusing what does not align. You start to trust that you are not here to be everything to everyone. You are here to be true to your unique vision. This is where the transformation begins, because the more you practice the discipline of saying no, the clearer your path becomes. All the noise and clutter fall away. Suddenly, you have space, mental space, emotional space, time to explore what makes you feel alive. You discover hidden strengths and passions you never had time to notice. They may feel uncomfortable at first. You may feel guilty or even ashamed. People might question your choices, especially if they benefited from your lack of boundaries. But in time, you will see that the discomfort was a small price to pay for the peace and clarity that follow. Saying no is how you draw a map of your priorities. It is how you tell yourself and the world, I know what matters to me. It is how you begin to build a life that reflects your deepest values, not just your fear of conflict. Imagine this: if you spend all your energy running in circles trying to please everyone, you will never have the stamina to pursue your true calling. You will never have the courage to take risks that could change your life because you will be too exhausted by obligations that don't matter in the long run. But when you start saying no, you reclaim that energy. You can channel it into creating, building, learning, and serving in ways that truly inspire you. This does not mean you become selfish or indifferent to others. In fact, it is the opposite. When you are aligned with your purpose, you become more present, more compassionate, and more effective. You can give generously because you are no longer giving from a place of resentment or depletion. You are giving from overflow, from the strength you cultivate by staying true to yourself. If you look at anyone who has built something extraordinary, a visionary leader, an artist, a healer, you will notice one thing in common. They learned how to say no. They learned that every dream requires sacrifices. They understood that to say yes to their calling, they had to decline distractions, even good things that were not meant for them. In your own life, you have the same choice. You can keep saying yes to everything and remain stuck in cycles of frustration, or You can trust that every no frees you to find something more meaningful. Every time you turn away from a path that doesn't resonate, you open yourself to new possibilities you couldn't see before. Think of saying no as a way of honoring your potential. It is a declaration that your time is valuable, your energy is sacred, and your dreams deserve protection. You were not put on this earth to merely survive the demands of others. You are here to discover what lights your spirit on fire and to pursue it with conviction. So, if you are feeling torn between the fear of disappointing someone and the quiet pull of your true path, remember this: saying no is not the end. It is often the very beginning of a new season in your life. It is an act of self-respect that signals to yourself and the universe that you are ready for something more. Give yourself permission to redirect. Give yourself permission to decline what doesn't serve your purpose. Trust that what is meant for you will not require you to betray your heart to keep it. When you embrace the hidden power of no, you step into the freedom of an authentic life, one in which every choice reflects not who you think you should be, but who you truly are. You are not obligated to set yourself on fire to keep others warm. Learning to say no is learning to honor your own needs without guilt. Many people live their lives trying to keep everyone around them comfortable and happy. They bend over backward to meet expectations, even when it costs them their own well-being. They become the dependable one, the fixer, the peacemaker. And somewhere along the way, they start believing that their worth is tied to how much they can sacrifice. But the truth is, constantly sacrificing yourself is not sustainable. It doesn't make you noble. It makes you exhausted. It doesn't make you more lovable. It makes you resentful. When you always say yes, when you constantly prioritize everyone else's comfort over your own, you begin to disappear. Your dreams get buried under the weight of obligations you never asked for. Your health suffers. Your mind never rests. There is a powerful lesson hidden in this pattern. If you have to set yourself on fire to keep others warm, something is deeply wrong. Love and care should never require you to destroy yourself. True connection is built on respect and reciprocity, not on martyrdom. Saying no is not an act of selfishness. It is an act of self-preservation. It is how you communicate to yourself and to others that your needs are just as important as anyone else's. When you begin to practice this, you will notice something remarkable. Most of the guilt you feel doesn't come from the actual harm of saying no. It comes from the fear of being misunderstood or rejected. That fear can be powerful. It will whisper in your ear that you are being rude or uncaring. It will try to convince you that if you start setting boundaries, you will lose the love and acceptance of the people around you. But this fear is an illusion. The people who genuinely care about you will not abandon you just because you are finally protecting your peace. The people who only valued you for what you could do for them may fall away. And as painful as that is, it's actually a gift. It creates space for more authentic relationships to take root. Learning to honor your needs without guilt is a journey. In the beginning, you may feel uncomfortable every time you say no. You may over-explain or apologize excessively. That is normal, especially if you were taught to equate worthiness with self-sacrifice. But over time, you will realize that you don't need to justify your boundaries to everyone. You are allowed to have limits simply because you are human. Consider this. When you say yes to everything, you are not truly present anywhere. You are constantly spread thin, trying to manage too many commitments. Your energy becomes fragmented. Your creativity dries up. Even your compassion erodes because you are too drained to care deeply. But when you start to say no, you reclaim the energy you need to be fully engaged with what actually matters. You can give better care to your family, do better work, and show up more powerfully in your purpose. precisely because you are no longer bleeding yourself dry for everyone else's comfort. Some people might challenge you when you start to set these boundaries. They may be used to your overgiving, and your no will feel like an unwelcome change. They may accuse you of being different, less available, less helpful. And in a way, they will be right. You are different. You are no longer willing to burn yourself out to meet unrealistic expectations. You are no longer willing to trade your well-being for temporary approval. This shift is not just about protecting yourself. It is about modeling healthy self-respect. When you practice saying no, you show others that it is possible to care deeply without surrendering your entire identity. You teach your children, your friends, and your colleagues that boundaries are not walls to keep people out. They are guidelines to ensure that your relationships remain healthy and sustainable. Imagine what your life would look like if you felt free to decline commitments that deplete you. Imagine if you trusted yourself enough to know that you are still a good person, even when you don't meet every demand. That freedom is closer than you think. It starts with one small act of courage, saying no without apology. You are allowed to rest. You are allowed to have time for yourself. You are allowed to pursue the dreams that bring you alive. And you are allowed to do all of this without feeling like you owe the world an explanation. Because you don't. When you stop setting yourself on fire to keep others warm, you discover that you can still love people, still support them, still show up in meaningful ways, just not at the cost of your own health and sanity. You learn that healthy relationships are built on mutual respect, not constant sacrifice. You see that the people who truly value you are the ones who respect your boundaries and cheer you on as you reclaim your life. It may feel radical at first to put yourself on the list of people you care about. But it is only radical because you have been conditioned to believe that everyone else's needs matter more. The moment you decide to challenge that belief is the moment you begin to come home to yourself. Saying no is an act of self-trust. It is proof that you believe your needs are worth honoring. And over time, as you practice it again and again, you will feel something you may not have felt in a long time: peace. You will feel the quiet satisfaction that comes from living a life that reflects who you really are. And that, more than anything, is worth protecting. Saying no is a declaration of independence. It frees you from hidden obligations that silently shape your choices and keeps you aligned with your true values. Most of us are unaware of how many hidden obligations we carry. They often begin so subtly, we don't even recognize them as obligations. A parent's unspoken expectation that you will always be available. A boss's assumption that you'll sacrifice your weekends for the company. A friend's habit of leaning on you emotionally without ever offering support in return. Over time, these invisible expectations become woven into your daily life until they feel like part of your identity. You stop questioning them and start believing that you owe everyone your time, your energy, and your attention. But living this way comes at a heavy price. When you never pause to examine these expectations, you begin to abandon yourself. Your days fill up with commitments you never consciously chose. Your mind grows cluttered with the noise of other people's demands. You start to feel disconnected from your purpose, like you're living someone else's life. Saying no is the first step to reclaiming your freedom. It is a declaration that your time is yours to give, not an open resource for anyone to claim. It is the moment you decide to stop living on autopilot and start living with intention. When you say no, you are not just refusing a request. You are questioning the invisible rules that have shaped your choices. You are asking yourself, does this serve me? Does this reflect who I am and what I value? Or am I only agreeing because I'm afraid to disappoint? These questions are powerful because they shine a light on the hidden contracts you have signed without realizing it. Maybe you learned as a child that love is earned through compliance. Maybe you learned that conflict should be avoided at all costs, even if it means betraying your own needs. Maybe you believed that to be a good person, you must always be available. These beliefs, once hidden, quietly dictate how you respond to life. But the moment you begin to say no, those old contracts lose their grip. You start to understand that your worth does not depend on how much you can endure. You see that you have the right to choose what you give your energy to. You feel the first spark of independence ignite in your spirit. Saying no also brings clarity. It forces you to define what really matters. If everything is important, then nothing is. When you start declining the requests and obligations that don't align with your values, you create space for what does. You have more time for the relationships that nurture you. You have more focus for the work that fulfills you. You have more energy to pursue the dreams you put on hold while you were busy keeping everyone else satisfied. This is not an easy practice. Many people will not understand at first. They may be disappointed, surprised, or even angry when you no longer meet their unspoken expectations. But that discomfort is part of the process. It is the friction that arises whenever you break free from old patterns. You are not responsible for other people's reactions to your boundaries. You are responsible for living in a way that is honest and sustainable. There is something liberating about realizing you don't have to justify every no. You don't have to explain why you are choosing yourself. You don't have to provide a list of acceptable reasons to validate your decision. A simple, respectful no is enough. It is a complete sentence. Over time, as you practice this, you will notice how much lighter you feel. You will discover that many of the obligations you once thought were non-negotiable were only illusions. You will start to see that freedom isn't just about escaping external constraints. It's about dismantling the internal narratives that kept you trapped. When you say no, you are declaring that your life is your own. You are acknowledging that your time is precious. You are affirming that you are not here to be everything to everyone. You are here to become the truest version of yourself. This is the heart of self-discovery. It is the journey of shedding everything that isn't you so you can reveal what has always been there. Your own voice, your own desires, your own sense of purpose. Each no clears a little more space for that voice to emerge. Each no strengthens your commitment to living with integrity. There will still be moments when you feel tempted to slip back into old habits. You will feel the familiar pull of guilt and doubt. But with each decision to honor your limits, you will grow more confident in your ability to stand firm. You will remember that freedom is not given, it is claimed, one choice at a time. So the next time you feel pressure to say yes out of obligation, pause, take a breath. Ask yourself whether this commitment aligns with who you are and who you are becoming. If the answer is no, let that be enough. You are not here to perform a role that others have scripted for you. You are here to write your own story. Saying no is not the end of connection or generosity. It is the beginning of authentic relationships built on truth. It is the path back to yourself. And as you walk it, you will discover that you are far stronger and freer than you ever imagined. No is a bridge to authenticity. Each time you decline what doesn't fit, you come closer to living a life that feels genuine, deliberate, and fulfilling. There comes a moment in every person's life when they realize that authenticity is not something that happens by accident. It is not a quality you magically stumble upon when you've checked off enough achievements or collected enough approval. Authenticity is a practice, a deliberate, often uncomfortable choice to show up in your life as you truly are, rather than who others expect you to be. One of the most powerful tools you will ever have in that practice is the simple, overlooked act of saying no. At first, this can feel almost too small to matter. How could declining an invitation, refusing a favor, or stepping back from an obligation create anything so significant as a bridge to authenticity? But if you look deeper, you'll see that every time you say no to something that doesn't align with your values, you are simultaneously saying yes to yourself. You are making a declaration that your inner compass matters more than the pressure to conform. Many people go through life feeling hollow because they are constantly compromising. They overextend themselves in relationships to avoid conflict. They agree to commitments they resent just to be polite. They wear masks that feel heavy but familiar because they fear the consequences of being real. Over time, all those tiny betrayals of the self pile up until you can barely recognize your own desires under the rubble of everyone else's expectation. But the moment you start to say no, you begin clearing that debris. Each refusal is like removing a brick from the wall that stands between you and your truth. Maybe it's a friendship that no longer feels reciprocal. Maybe it's a career path that impresses others but drains your spirit. Maybe it's the cultural story that tells you you must be endlessly accommodating to be worthy of love. Every no to these things is a step closer to the life that belongs to you. This is why no is a bridge. It carries you across the gap between pretending and honesty. It leads you from a place of automatic compliance to a place of deliberate choice. The bridge is not always easy to cross. Sometimes it feels shaky and sometimes it's lonely, but it is always worth walking because it is the only way to arrive at a life that feels like your own. As you practice this, you will notice something remarkable begin to happen. Clarity. When you stop saying yes out of guilt, fear, or habit, you create the mental and emotional space to ask better questions. What do I really want? What kind of person do I choose to be? What contribution do I want to make? These questions might feel uncomfortable because they have no convenient pre-packaged answers, but they are the questions that connect you to your deepest truth. At first, you might feel resistance. The voice in your mind will whisper that you're selfish, ungrateful, or difficult. But that voice is only the echo of old conditioning. The truth is that you were never put on this earth to abandon yourself in service of others' expectations. You were made to live a life that reflects who you are, not who you were taught to be. With each no, you also begin to attract relationships and opportunities that resonate with your genuine values. When you stop agreeing to everything out of fear, you discover who really respects you and who only valued your compliance. This can feel painful. Some people will drift away when you stop being constantly available, but it is also liberating because you are no longer maintaining connections that require you to be false. The people who remain are the ones who cherish you for your honesty, not for how well you perform a role. Saying no also strengthens your self-respect. You realize that your time and energy are finite and precious. You learn to guard them as you would any sacred resource. You begin to experience the quiet joy of living in alignment with your principles. That joy is the foundation of true fulfillment. It is the peace of knowing you no longer need to apologize for who you are or compromise to feel accepted. You will discover that authenticity is not a destination you reach after years of effort. It is a moment-to-moment practice. Every time you make a choice based on your real values, you are practicing. Every time you listen to the small, steady voice inside you, rather than the loud opinions around you, you are practicing. Every time you allow yourself to be seen as you are, even when it's inconvenient or uncomfortable, you are practicing. No is what makes this practice possible. It is the tool that clears the clutter and creates space for your truth to emerge. It is the signal that you trust yourself enough to set boundaries. It is the promise that you will no longer sacrifice your well-being for the illusion of acceptance. When you look back years from now, you will see that all those small moments of courage, Those simple words, spoken firmly and kindly, became the stepping stones to a life that feels deliberate and whole. You will see that the bridge you built with your no led you somewhere beautiful, to the center of yourself, where you are finally free to live in a way that feels genuine, clear, and deeply fulfilling.